this morning, as part of our Pure Talk series, we'll be discussing heritage, Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I know that many people, they want to know about their heritage, who they are, where they came from. They want to know about Carriacou, they want to know about Petite Martinique. And this morning, we have with us Mr. John Angus Martin. Good morning to you, Mr. Martin.
Good morning, Rena. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And good morning to you, Mr. Jonathan Hanna.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right. So just to say, it is part of our tourism awareness month of activities. Last week, every week we have a theme. Last week's theme was coastal restoration. This week, heritage. Next week, as part of our Pure Talk, we'll be discussing environment. And to close it off, the final week in November, we know that it's the Christmas season and we'll be discussing culture, string band music. And we want to thank Sister Els Radio, who's always on board with us. The quiz, which started last week, and we want to congratulate all the students who have participated and won thus far. And we want to continue all the other students of the different schools around Carriacou and Petite Martinique to call in so that you can win. So just to start this morning discussion, as I said, we have with us Mr. Angus Martin, who is a historian, archivist, and a researcher, and currently serves as the director of the Saba Heritage Center, Saba Dutch Caribbean. He has a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences from Stony Brook, and master's degree in Agricultural and Applied Economics and Heritage from Clemson University. As an archivist and historian, he specializes in the history of colonialism and slavery in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. He is currently completing a PhD in heritage management in the Faculty of Archaeology at Leiden University, the Netherlands, examining landscape history, representation, and identity in Grenada. Is the author-editor of several books and articles, including Island Caribs and French Settlers in Grenada, 1948 to 1763, and with Joe Opala and Cynthia Skimbit, the Temne Nation of Carriacou, Sierra Leone's lost a family in the Caribbean. Mr. Jonathan Hanna is a former Peace Corps that served in Grenada from 2010 to 2013, who came back to study the island's pre-Columbian archaeology. He now holds a PhD in anthropology from Pennsylvania State University and currently works at the Grenada National Museum. He's also co-founder of the Grenada Public Archaeology Network, GPAN, which aims to train interested local people in basics archaeological and heritage management. This community archaeology format is something he would like to implement at the recently discovered site near Black Bay, Bellevue South, Carriacou next year. Thank you very much for appearing on this morning's program, and I now hand it over to you, gentlemen.
Hey, morning. Yeah, I guess I could describe a little bit about the pre-Columbian archaeology in Carriacou, and then pass it to Angus for kind of overview of the historical situation. Then we could go back to more specifics.
Sounds good.
All right, so the pre-Columbian settlement of Carriacou, it's similar to the other Grenadines and even Grenada. It starts kind of late in like Caribbean, like the pre-Columbian history. About 300 AD is when we really start to see settlements on Carriacou. It's a little bit earlier than the other Grenadines. Carriacou, of course, is the biggest, so it kind of makes sense. Most of the sites are on the Atlantic side. We have about 19 recorded sites on Carriacou, like Amerindian sites. Only 2 date to that 300 AD period. That's Grand Bay and Sabazan. And then all the others seem to be settled around 750 to 900 AD. That's like a peak population period in the Caribbean. It's unclear how many actually were still occupied at the time of contact with Europeans. But judging by other islands, including Grenada, there was probably a big drop off sometime after 1400 AD. And so there were probably a few sites still occupied, but it's unclear. Grand Bay is one of the ones that was probably occupied the entire time, just based on the archaeology that's been done there. It's a massive site. All these sites are coastal. They're I don't think any are really inland, which is common too throughout the Caribbean, and Grenada only has a couple inland sites. So very similar. Technically, they're all protected under the 2017 Museum Act, but that has yet to be really implemented. Somewhat ironically, Grand Bay was one that was specifically protected under the 1991 Heritage Act. But of course, that experienced a lot of sand mining and kind of destroyed the site. And Pearls is a similar situation. Both of those were listed in the 1991 Heritage Act, and they both have been heavily disturbed. I don't know, because of the attention or what, but they're similar sites in a lot of ways. Yeah, so that's kind of the overview. I don't know if Angus wants to talk about the historical background. Okay.
Sure. I think for the historical period, we'll look, Carriacou, of course, is connected to Grenada, as Grenada has been joined to the Grenadines. We know that it's Granada y Granadios. That was the Spanish, name for Grenada and the Grenadines. Because the islands, the little islands, beginning with Sugarloaf, Livera Island off of St. Patrick's. We know that all of these little islands seem to connect to Grenada. So that's why they were attached to Grenada, and in the historical period as well. So there it begins, that history. And we know Grenada was not settled until 1649, even though there was an early attempt in 1609. We tend to think that because Grenada was settled in 1649, that the Grenadines were, and which was not the case. The islands, however, were used for various activities. Some of them would be considered illegal, in a sense there was a lot of illegal trade and things going on. There was a lot of turtle fishing on Carriacou in that early period, in the late 1600s, even up to the early 1700s. And there was some pirate activities as well. There could also have been people who were living on the island temporarily, people who left the larger islands that didn't want to be under either British or French governments. Generally left places like Martinique and Guadeloupe and Barbados, and just ended up on these little islands and set up camp. But we really don't see permanent settlement in Carriacou until the mid-1740s. Just recently, I was able to do some land deeds and realize that the earliest we have of an actual land deed concession made to a settler on Carriacou was 1746. So that is when we see people coming in from Guadeloupe and Martinique and from Grenada, people who are looking for property, looking for land, and that's where land begins being given out to these settlers. In 1750, there is a census. We have a census from Carriacou, which records a population of 200 people, or 199 actually, settled on Carriacou across the island. And this is almost split equally between free and enslaved people. And at that time, most of the people would have been growing cotton or indigo. And that situation basically continues all the way to 1762, when the British took over Grenada and the Grenadines. And we see that the British coming in, basically taking over the colony from the French, and Carriacou begins to change from a population of less than 600 enslaved people. Within 2-3 decades, the population would increase to 3,000 plus enslaved people. The plantations would consolidate and become larger. So you have a lot of the small French planters selling off to these British planters. And some of these plantations like Lemlai and Bel Air and some of the others would start producing sugar as well as indigo. Some of them even did cocoa. Under the French, there was a much diverse agriculture that basically increased. It decreased once the British came in because they concentrated on sugar and cotton. And Carriacou and the Grenadines on a whole really produced quite a lot of cotton. A lot of the trade went directly to Scotland because of the concentration of Scottish ownership of plantations on Carriacou. We know this, you could see from the names of the places on Carriacou. Lemlai, which is from the Scottish place name called Lemlai, Craigston, Meldrum, Argyll, and other British plantations like Mount Pleasant that was owned by Tarleton, whose name is still on the map of Carriacou. So we see that change in Carriacou when the British came in. We see sugar production increasing in the early 1800s on some of these other estates, and the remnants of these are some of the towers, the windmill towers. Slavery was ended in 1834, and apprenticeship ended in 1838, and Carriacou as a colony seemed to have gone downhill economically after that, because many of the planters abandoned their plantations. And it wasn't until the end of the 1800s, sorry, that they recognized that people in Carriacou needed access to land because a lot of the peasantry did not have any access to land, and the island was really poor. So in the early 1900s, there were some land settlement schemes that gave property over at reduced rates to locals, and we see the development of Carriacou as we know it today. Cotton, of course, continued to be the primary crop, even though there was production of peanuts or groundnuts. Corn was a major food item. And we see all cotton produced all the way into the 1970s and even, I think, the beginning of the 80s. And then the crop kind of went away because it was no longer economical to produce it. So that's the basic history of Carriacou until Grenada becomes independent. I should mention one thing, I guess, about the Grenadines. Back in 1783, the British basically cut the Grenadines in two, put in the islands. It's interesting that the separation is actually equal in terms of land area. Carriacou, being the larger of the Grenadines, basically made up for the rest of all the majority of the islands that went to St. Vincent. And that was because of a security issue, because the British were afraid that if somehow St. Vincent remained with the French, that if the French got Grenada back, then it would be very close to St. Vincent, and that would be a security threat to them. So that's why the Grenadines were basically cut and separated between Grenada and St. Vincent. But the islands themselves have a very Grenadine, a very local feel, and there's a continuous interactions between them, despite their connections to two different countries today. So I guess, Jonathan, we can go back and talk about some of the current situation now. And Rena, I guess if you want to ask any specific questions, we can entertain that after Jonathan talks about the current archaeological situation.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if Rena wants to ask anything about that, or I could just give an overview. Actually, I guess if you want to say what I was thinking while you were talking about that is the common perception that Gun Point is still technically owned by St. Vincent. don't know if you want to
Sure,
say anything.
sure. That is a very common comment, but we have found no evidence to support that, because basically the report when it was separated, when Carriacou was separated from when the Grenadines were cut, all that we know is that every island south of Carriacou belonged to Grenada, and every island north of Carriacou belonged to St. Vincent. So there really was not an actual separation in terms of a geographic separation other than that. So we're not quite sure where that originated from. The idea that gunpoint was given to St. Vincent. There probably is something there, but again, we found nothing to really tell us, where that could have originated. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a common question people had. Yeah, all right. So I could talk a little bit about the Black Bay site, or what I call the Black Bay site. I'm still not sure exactly what to call it, but earlier this year, Rena and Basie and a few people local that live locally, Chris Stanislaw and them, found some pottery in the water at a beach that I think would be generally called Black Bay. And there was a site known in the area as Black Bay, so I'm trying to keep with what was previously known. The thing is that very little was actually known about it. There was a lady in the 80s that had said she had found a bunch of things, but she didn't. She's basically an amateur archaeologist, Lemlai Estate. And I hesitate to even say that, but she did write a little bit. So that's important in terms of whether she's an archaeologist or just, an enthusiast or something. She actually wrote some reports. They aren't that great, and it's not clear where exactly she was talking about. And then she did a big survey of a lot of the Grenadines, including Carriacou, and then gave everything to Martinique for some reason. So we don't have any of those artifacts, which was illegal, at the time, in terms of UNESCO and UNIDROIT conventions and things. So that was really unconventional and should not have done that. And as a result, we don't have a lot about any of the artifacts that she found. It turns out that there was a publication from the Martinique Museum back in the early 2000s, and there's a ton of stuff from Lemlai Estate from this Black Bay site, and it seems to match the stuff that we were seeing when I visited earlier this year, back in July. So it does seem to be the same thing. There was another set of archaeologists, Scott Fitzpatrick and Carriacou and them, who were working at Grand Bay. They did a general survey, walkover of Carriacou and just identifying sites. And at the time, and this was 2004, they didn't find much at Black Bay. I don't know how hard they really looked, but looking at satellite maps, it's clear there was a lot of erosion that happened after that. So they said they didn't find anything. Then after that, there were some storm surges and a lot of erosion. There was more sand mining and things. And so that whole area seems to have totally changed in the last 15 years with a lot of erosion. And that also contributed to now what we're seeing now with these pots showing up. So it was a really important find in the sense we didn't know. We thought there was something in the area. We didn't know what. We didn't know it was so much, or even how well preserved it is, because these are complete pots, which is super rare to find. They're probably what these guys found, and which there's still some there, are these pot-lined wells, or that's what the going hypothesis is that these are probably stacked pots that have broken bases. You basically dig a hole and you put these pots in there, and then you can get fresh water up. And this is something that Amerindians did all over the Caribbean, especially in the Grenadines, where there's no permanent water sources. So actually settling the Grenadines was no problem for them, because they just put these pot-lined wells everywhere. And there was a great example, or there was at the Carriacou Museum, that's showing these pot stacks. So that's the going hypothesis. Problem, of course, is that they're in the water, which is really hard to get out or to excavate properly. So I would like to do more there. I'm trying to figure out what some of the options are, in terms of like maybe like an inflatable coffer dam, these like big heavy duty plastic barriers that you fill with water and it stops the water from coming in, and then you can pump it out and you can excavate. So that's what we're playing with, the idea that trying to get some funding for it, to do a project down there, and hopefully recover as much information as we can. So I commend Rena and everyone for trying to do the right thing. It's unfortunate that in Grenada that it's not clear what to do in these situations. I would say people should call the museum, but the museum often doesn't have anybody. I mean, I'm connected to the museum now, but not always able to do anything. And even, people will call the police or something. The police might not know what to do. And so, I mean, I wonder how many times things like this happen and no one really finds out, or, the researchers never find out, and then we can't actually ever help with the situation. So it's really awesome that you guys got in touch with us and were able to try and do something. I think that because of the situation, with it's sort of ambiguous of who could, has any authority over the archaeology of Grenada, that, sort of community archaeology projects, like a similar thing to what we've done at Las Ages and also now in Saltaires Bay, is implementing a community project where local people are trained in archaeology and can help monitor these sites just in their community, and they're the people that we go to, and that can report back when things are happening or when new things are found, or, so I think that's really the best way to do it. And that's what I would like to do in Carriacou, at least at the Black Bay site, maybe a few other places, because I know there's a lot of interest. So yeah, it just takes time and money to do it. I don't know if Rena, if you have any questions, or Angus and I could talk forever. So.
All right, I just want to thank you both for appearing on the program. And Jonathan, I want to thank you. I remember when we called you, you said, okay, you're busy doing a project. I think it was in St. John or Certes. And you happily responded and said, you know what, this is urgent. I'm going to make some time and come up, and both you and Lonadale came on. And I just want to thank you on behalf of Grenada Tourism Authority, Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs, who also, when we spoke to Minister about it, she was very, very much supportive to the project. And we look forward to the excavation. We look forward to great work, of course, being properly managed. I know that some people think, okay, now that the site was announced that people will go down and steal the potteries, we immediately got in touch with the Royal Grenada Police Force. I know they would have done many patrols at that area, but we look forward to the next phase involving the community and giving an update as to the next phase, Jonathan.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Thank you for involving me. It's super interesting, and I've been itching to get up to Carriacou. I do so much in Grenada, so this is a great opportunity to try to help. Hopefully, it's a way to do a lot of things in Carriacou with heritage and even Petite Martinique. There is at least one Amerindian site on Petite Martinique. We're not sure exactly where it is, but we have some pottery from there. So yeah, it would be great to do these little community projects all over, so then people are just aware. Yeah.
of course, yes, I know that a lot of people, they like connecting with the ancestors. They like knowing about the background, where they came from. So Jonathan and Angus, they're very, very cooperative. I know that any questions you have to the general public, you can contact them. So probably Jonathan and Angus, if it's okay, maybe you can give your contact details just in case someone may want to contact you for information, if that's fine.
Yeah, sure. Anyone could email
Sure.
me. My museum email is jhanna@museum.gd. I'm also on Facebook and stuff.
Same here. I'm on Facebook. Rena, you have my contact. You can share that with if somebody contacts you, of course. So.
Okay, great.
Hopefully I don't get
Great.
spammed. I'm now on all these mailing lists.
Great, no problem. What I want to speak about, John, is a project that the Grenada Tourism Authority, along with the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, is ongoing now at the Lemlai ruins. As you mentioned, that we have a rich history on the island, and our ancestors who came here and worked on our many plantations. And the evidence is littered throughout the island where there are many ruins. And at Lemlai, presently we have the former plantation owner house there. I know that when we introduced the project last year, a lot of people were saying they did not know about this place, they don't know where it is. And we thought, okay, we'll do some work there, introduce it to the public. So we started with landscaping, and we continued with signage. If you go to the Discover Carriacou and Petite Martinique Facebook page, persons will see photos of the signs. Great work that is going on there. Kido, I want to congratulate Dario and Kido for great work they're doing with the signs. Neil Farmers, who is building the gazebo, more or less like an information booth where many information will be published about that entire estate, so that even if a class goes up there, they can get that information easily. That trail, we want to link it with Bele. It would be a project that will be ongoing because we cannot do everything at the moment now. So more or less, we know at Bele has a rich history. There are 2 sugar mills in Bele. There is a PRE camp. There's a Great House. So we want to, the largest sugar mill, which is in Bele, a trail would connect to the Lemlai Estate in the area which is known as Newland. Also in that area is a cave, which is said the first Catholic priest lived in that cave who came to Carriacou. So we want to create that walkthrough. We know that if people want to hike presently, they'll go to Hanna, Chapeka Way to connect with a natural habitat. But this would be a cultural tour, seeing the work of our ancestors. And there is a Mingo well, which was instrumental in making the dye indigo. I think there is a cotton and sugar mill there as well. A mausoleum where the plantation owner, Mr. Hugh Monroe, is buried. So Angus, if you have any information, can you please share with us in regards to that estate, the Lemlai Estate?
Sure. Lemlai is an interesting estate in Carriacou. It began as a cotton and indigo plantation in the mid-1700s. And the name Lemlai is actually from a Scottish place name called Lemlai. It may have to do with the geography of the place or something like that, but also the individual that was the first British plantation owner, his name was Hugh Monroe. He actually, the Monroes, their ancestral seat is called Lemlai. So that's where the name basically came from. Unlike several other places on the island, there are these direct connections to places in Scotland. There was a heavy Scottish presence on the island of Carriacou, and it was often joked that Carriacou was a colony of North Britain, i.e. Scotland, than it was of England, where Grenada had most of its connections, even though Grenada also had some Scottish, direct Scottish connections as well. But one of the things that you do see, Lemlai ended up being one of the largest plantations on Carriacou, over 500 acres. It was one of the first to do sugar production. We know from and this is all the way back to the 1770s, and Hugh Monroe was responsible for making a much larger estate with properties that he bought from the French. By the 1790s, it had even taken over Saint Hilaire estate as well once he moved on to some of the other Grenadines. So we see this really large estate developing as a sugar estate. I think when we look at the monumental landscape, the ruins of the houses and things like that, we tend to only see what the plantation was, and we tend to forget, I guess, the work that was done, or the forced work that was done by the enslaved people who were brought there. We do actually have list of enslaved people on Lemlai Estate and on many of the other estates as well, because we have a list from 1817 all the way to 1834. So we know the names of the last enslaved people on Lemlai, as well as the other plantations. The Ningo Well is one of the interesting ruins on the plantation, because it's a connection to the production of indigo. It is a very unique well, and I was having a conversation with Dario from Quito, and one of the things you're trying to figure out, you know, where the design came from and stuff like that, and we really don't see a similar type well, you know, across the region. So most likely the design for it was brought in, and it could have developed as a simple well in the beginning, but expanded because once the plantation got larger, it needed more access to more water, especially if it was producing sugar as well. So there could have been that expansive creation of this well, with lined with stones, which is a very unique well across Carriacou even and the rest of the islands. So that is something that really makes it unique. And we know that in the bushes next to the well, we know the ruins of some of the indigo vats that was used to produce the indigo, the dye. But by the 1770s, 80s, we see indigo is actually gone out because they're now producing a lot of cotton and sugar. There is, in the 1790s, we know that there was a windmill on Lemlai because that was what they were using to grind the sugar cane. There may have also been a cattle mill. We really don't have too many documents from the estate, which is interesting in itself. But there are all these ruins around that really give us a good background so that we could interpret some of these now, so people can go through and learn about it. And we would like to do as much information as possible in terms of the enslaved people, you know, and what their lives would have been as well, not just of the plantation owner, who there is the mausoleum, you know, where his son was buried. I think he had a son that died after a few months, I think, and himself as well was buried there. But one of the things I would like to see is that we also show what the lives of the enslaved people on the plantation was like. I look forward to visiting soon and seeing some of the work that you guys are doing at Lemlai. I think it's a really good site that can allow us to really interpret what took place during slavery and after, and give a good idea of what the lives of the people on the plantation, not just the owners, but the enslaved people was like. So I definitely look forward to that. And I will, of course, you know, any information that I can add to help you do the interpretation, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you. And thank you for all the information you have provided in the past to Grenada Tourism Authority in assisting us with our many projects, and even you traveling to Carriacou during our Tourism Awareness Month. I think it was 2018 when we did the tour at the Lemlai Estate with the different schools.
Right. It could have been 2018 or 19. I'm not sure which.
Thank you very much again. And as you mentioned, traveling to Carriacou, I know there is a to C which you wrote with Grenada's history, which includes a bit about Carriacou and the Grenadines. But are there any plans writing A to Z about Carriacou and Petite Martinique?
Yes, I'm getting ready to put out the second edition of A to Z of Grenada Heritage, but I've been thinking that it really would be good to concentrate on Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I think we have generally always attached Carriacou and Petite Martinique to the end of Grenada as an appendage, sort of. I think when it comes to history and culture, I think we should give Carriacou and Petite Martinique their due, and I think doing that would put them allow Carriacou and Petite Martiniquans to see themselves in their own image in a way, by allowing the history and culture to be told just about Carriacou and Petite Martinique, with maybe one entry on Grenada just showing the connection, but really all of the entries would be the things that matter most to Carriacou and Petite Martinique. So if it wasn't for COVID, I probably would have already traveled to Carriacou and Petite Martinique to start some of that, but I already have quite a bit of it, and I've asked you several questions in trying to look at the specifics, because being from Grenada, I know certain aspects of Carriacou, but there's a lot about Carriacou, that I need to learn about in order to do the A to Z of Carriacou Heritage. So I look forward to coming to Carriacou soon, hopefully early next year, to put in some of that together and putting together A to Z of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Heritage.
Lovely. We look forward to having you, not only on heritage, but our culture. Carriacou is known as the cradle of culture. There are many traditions which we still practice, which are alive. The authentic Carriacou and Petite Martinique experience, which I think would play a great part of your writing.
Yes, I think Carriacou offers, as we can see from the extensive research that people have done on multiple aspects of Carriacou's culture and heritage, that Carriacou affords some very interesting, one of the projects that we worked on, it was back in 2016, maybe, when we did the Timney reunion in Carriacou, where we brought some folks from Sierra Leone, to reconnect with Carriacou, specifically with the Timney Nation in the Big Drum Dance. So yeah, we can do, I think that is something that we can continue. I think probably the next one that we could look at would be the Cro-Manti connections to Ghana. I think there is really quite a lot of information already, and I think Ghana is also reaching out to the diaspora. So I think it would be really interesting to make that connection between the Cro-Manti in the nation dance to the Akan or Shanti in Ghana. So that would definitely be something, I think, to make more of these connections, because Carriacou, has been able to retain in their memory these songs and dances that connect to West Africa in very interesting ways, unlike many other places across the region. So I think that's one of the things that we could probably look into, is it's making that connection to Ghana, which is, I think, is pretty strong.
I am happy that you mentioned that, because only on Saturday I was speaking to our CEO, Ms. Petra Roach, and we discussed the visit from the Sierra Leone tribe, the Temne tribe, to Carriacou in 2016. And we were speaking about the return trip to Sierra Leone, which did not happen as yet, and wondering how soon it can happen. So that was something I plan on touching base with you to speak about, to discuss. I know with COVID, everything fall short. But I hope that it can happen soon. I would love to go to Sierra Leone. I would love to go to Ghana. I want to go to the Elmenina Castle in Ghana, the point of no return, to see where all foreparents left and everything like that. So I think that's an important thing to do. The different tribes in Africa coming to Carriacou to connect, and we doing the same.
Right. I think the problem with Sierra Leone, right as we were getting ready to explore people from Carriacou, like a group of Big Drum Dance and others going to Sierra Leone. We had the Ebola outbreak in that area, so we definitely could not just pursue that. And then we had COVID. Actually, there was just a really big tragedy in Sierra Leone over the weekend on Friday, I think it was, where a tanker blew up, and almost 100 people were killed. So that's very tragic. But it is something that we would like to continue to pursue, and probably need to reconnect with Amadou Masli, who was the one that really made the connection. He's from Sierra Leone, and he lives in the US, and he's really all about connecting the diaspora with Sierra Leone. So we probably need to reconnect with him and explore how we can go about continuing that connection between Sierra Leone and Carriacou, and also looking at the possibility of connecting to Ghana as well. Because I think, like I said, Ghana is really reaching out, to the Caribbean. The president of Ghana visited Barbados, at least I think. Had he known, or had he been more aware of the connections with Carriacou, he probably would have made a visit, to Grenada. So I think definitely Grenada and Carriacou. So I definitely think that is something that we really should be pursuing, So anybody who is interested in this probably can say, especially in the government, how can we make these connections and create better relations between, ancestral West Africa and Carriacou specifically.
Lovely. From my end, I'll see what I can do, but I think it's very, very important. So I know that we've taken up a lot of your time, a lot of both you and Jonathan time. I just want to thank you both on behalf of the Grenada Tourism Authority. Thank you both for appearing on the program this morning. Thank you to Sistyles Radio for always accommodating us. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I do not know if
I think we go until 11.
Okay. Jack, Linton, Sistyles Radio, do you have any questions, or can we accommodate? I'm not sure.
No, not at the moment, no.
Okay, so no questions. Well, thank you so much again, guys. We look forward to even the launch of the Lemlai project. Hopefully all goes well. We're looking forward to that month end. So once it's started out, we'll be touching base with Sistyles Radio in assisting, providing the information to the general public. So again, we want to thank you all, and
Irina,
we look forward. Hi.
Irina, let me just say one thing. I know there are lots of people in Carriacou as well as Grenada and places that are doing genealogical research, trying to make connections and things like that. We actually have a Facebook page, Grenada Genealogical and Historical Society online, where people who are interested in searching, for their family history, can post questions, put up different information, and connect with others who are doing similar research. So I think if people are interested in that, we can definitely connect on Facebook to explore some of these options that people might have, because as more and more information comes online, and doing Grenadian and Caribbean genealogy is not easy because of the lack of information, but there's also people doing DNA, home DNA tests, and there are people who are really good at making these connections as well. So I think for anybody who in Carriacou that might be interested, that want to explore their family history and things like that, that they could get in touch with the Grenada Genealogical and Historical Society online on Facebook, for assistance.
Lovely. Well, I am following that page and I'm fascinated by the information which is posted. Very informative, and sometimes I go there for information as well.
Yeah. And like I said, we've talked about your name, the mill name, and you've added an S, the Mills. of Carriacou, which that name actually derives from the owners of the Grand Bay Plantation Mill, first owned by John Mill, and it stayed in the Mill family all the way until the 1900s, the early 1900s. So it would be interesting to find out, how we've looked at some of the naming practices on Grenada and Carriacou, so it'd be interesting to explore things like that,
While you're speaking about that, I want you to just briefly speak about the fact that many of the surname has the S in it. How during those period, how a surname and the name came about.
Right. We see that in the case of Grenada, once slavery had ended, that people were encouraged, or I guess pushed to get family names, because most enslaved people had a single name, which was a first name. So after slavery, people started adopting different names. And one of the things that we see is that a family took the name of the male, of the father of the family, so his first name. So if his name was Andrew, the family name became Andrews. And we see that Peters, Williams occurring. These are some of the common ones. Carriacou is unique as well in having several Ghanaian derived names. Kwame, Kwamina, and Kojo, and things like that. So they are very unique things in some of the naming practices, but one of them we do see is the addition of an S to make the name sound better, I guess, in its pronunciation, and it takes it away from being a first name to a last name, which is a similar practice from Europe as well. You do see some of these practices, but Carriacou has that pretty unique naming practice.
Of course, yeah.
I don't know if Jonathan wants to add something before we leave. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm good. I'm just enjoying listening to you. But yeah, there's that Facebook page, the Grenada Genealogical Society. That, I mean, even though I'm not of Grenadian descent, I'm always on there. It's just super interesting. And whenever anybody asks me about things like that, I send them to that, and also Angus's blog post about surnames, which is pretty extensive in terms of a general about naming practices. Yeah, I mean, those are really great starts if anybody's interested in researching their family history. Hopefully, I know there have been many digitization projects through government over the years, and some of them, things were digitized and we lost them. But I know there's one happening now that's supposed to continue for next year or two, and a lot of things are supposed to come online, like deeds and births and deaths and things like that, as well as a number of historical documents. I'm not sure how accessible, like if you have to pay or not, but I'm so glad we have all this stuff set up and so many people talking about it, because when things like that come in, then it's like we can immediately engage with it and start using it, so there's plenty of things out there.
Right. Actually, the births and deaths from 1866, which is when it was officially started, the civil list, all the way to 1930s, actually available at the Family History, the Mormon, the LDS site. So you can search online to find some of that information. It's not the easiest because they don't list the children's name, they list the parents' name. So it's you have to know how to maneuver it. But more and more of this kind of information is coming online and making this kind of research easier. So people, and Rena and Basie does some really good work in going to some of these cemeteries across Carriacou and talking about ancestry and things like that, and showing, some of these gravestones. We need to do more of that kind of information systematically and recording the information on these gravestones before they're lost, because we have already lost so many of them already, so I think it would be really cool if we can record these gravestones so that we have that information. And there are different ways of doing this, and we just need to do it systematically capture that information before it all fades away.
Yeah, that's cemetery mapping is on my list of activities for the community archaeology project, like continuing on. Yeah, because
Right.
there's stuff is just disappearing all the time. And
Yeah, so that is definitely something you could do in Carriacou, because and
there's not
Rena
great maps.
has been to all of these cemeteries in exploring Carriacou and Petite Martinique video shows that she does. So
Yeah, so that's super interesting. And actually, yeah, the Explore Carriacou Petite Martinique page is also highly recommended because you have so much on there, heritage related. Even like the Carriacou Museum, which I had only visited once before, and then back in July again. But I hadn't, I'd allowed to take pictures and stuff. But Rena got in there and was able to get a whole video of the place. Before it was, I think it was before a lot of it was taken down too. It was like super useful.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, great resource.
All right, so thank you guys. Interest of time, I think we should wrap up. For those who missed today's interview, we'll try to post it to the official page of the Greater Tourism Authority, which is Discover Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We look forward to next week. Interview will be on the environment. We observe that working at the Lemlai ruins, especially Ningo Well, many of the sites we are cleaning while other people are littering. So we want to touch a bit on anti-littering next week, God's will. And I want to thank Sisters Radio again. We look forward to another series of our Pure Talk. 10 o'clock next Tuesday, we'll be speaking about environment. Your final words before we close in 2 minutes.
Jonathan, go ahead. Yes, a few.
Oh, well, just thank you so much for inviting me. It was really great to have this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to all the future things we have planned. I think it was unexpected, and now I feel like a whole bunch of doors have been opened. There's a lot of possibilities now. So I'm really, really happy to be here. And thank you.
Thanks again for having me, and of course, always look forward to interactions with you, Rena and Casey, and Carriacou's heritage and culture. Thanks again.
All right, on behalf of the Stars Radio, I want to say thank you guys for choosing us to broadcast this message right here. And we hope you guys come again very soon with some more interesting things like this. All right.
Of course.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.